From Boys to Men, the lost journey of masculine transformation, how discipline, responsibility, mentorship, and purpose create great men. Introduction: the forgotten journey. Every society in human history has faced one important question. How does a boy become a man? It is a question that appears simple, yet it touches the deepest foundations of civilization. A boy is born, he grows, his body changes, he becomes physically stronger. But something remains unanswered. Does growing older automatically make someone a man? History tells us the answer is no. A person can have the body of an adult but still carry the mindset of a child. A person can have wealth but lack wisdom. A person can have power but lack self-control. A person can command others but fail to govern himself. True manhood has never been defined only by age. It has been defined by transformation. Across the world, ancient societies understood something that modern societies sometimes forget. A boy must be prepared for adulthood. He must be taught, he must be challenged, he must be guided. He must discover responsibility, because a society does not simply inherit men, it creates them. The question of becoming a man has been explored by philosophers, psychologists, historians, and writers throughout human history. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle argued that character is not something people are simply born with. Character is developed through repeated actions. A person becomes courageous by practicing courage. A person becomes disciplined by practicing discipline. A person becomes responsible by accepting responsibility. In other words, a man is built through what he repeatedly chooses to do. The psychologist Carl Jung studied the deeper patterns of human development and believed that people must integrate different parts of themselves to become complete. The journey of becoming a mature man involves discovering strength without cruelty, confidence without arrogance, ambition without selfishness, emotions without being controlled by emotions. The writer, Robert Bly, in his book, Iron John, a book about men, argued that modern societies have lost many of the traditions that once helped boys transition into adulthood. His argument was not that the past was perfect. Rather, he observed that many cultures understood something important. A boy needs a meaningful journey into manhood. Without that journey, many young men search for identity without guidance. Today, many young men are surrounded by information but lack wisdom. They have access to millions of voices but may not have a mentor. They have freedom but may not understand responsibility. They have entertainment but may lack purpose. This creates one of the greatest challenges of our time. How do we raise boys who become responsible men? To answer this question, we must travel through history. We must examine ancient traditions. We must study psychology. We must listen to philosophers. We must learn from men who were transformed through hardship. We must understand the struggles facing young men today. And finally, we must ask, what kind of men does the future need? Chapter 1. Born male. Becoming a man, a human being, enters the world completely dependent. A child cannot survive alone. He needs protection, care, guidance, teaching. This dependence is natural. Childhood is supposed to be a time of receiving, but life demands a transformation. Eventually, the person who was protected must learn to protect. The person who received guidance must learn to guide. The person who depended on others must learn to carry responsibility. This is the journey from boyhood to manhood. Biology is not the same as maturity. One of the biggest misunderstandings about adulthood is believing that biological change automatically creates maturity. A boy experiences puberty. His body develops, his voice changes, his strength increases. But these changes only create physical adulthood. They do not automatically create wisdom, discipline, courage, responsibility. A man is not created when his body changes. A man is created when his character changes. A young person may reach 18 years old and receive legal rights. But adulthood is not simply about receiving freedom. It is about carrying responsibility. Freedom without responsibility creates chaos. Responsibility transforms freedom into purpose. The psychologist Erik Erikson provided one of the most influential explanations of human development. He described different stages through which people develop psychologically. One of the most important stages for young people is identity versus role confusion. During adolescence, a young person asks, "Who am I? What do I believe? What kind of person will I become?" This stage is especially important for boys, because a boy is constantly receiving messages about what a man should be. He learns from family, friends, culture, media, teachers, online communities. The question is, who will influence him the most? If a boy is guided by wisdom, he may develop confidence, purpose, discipline. If he is guided by unhealthy influences, he may search for identity through popularity, aggression, possessions, approval. The greatest danger is not that boys lack information. The greatest danger is that they lack direction. The boy's first question a child naturally asks, who will take care of me? This question is necessary. A child needs security. But maturity requires a transformation. The question slowly changes. The young man begins asking, what can I contribute? Who depends on me? What responsibility can I accept? This is the psychological movement from dependence to contribution. The movement from, I need the world to serve me, to I have something valuable to offer the world. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote about the idea of self-overcoming. Human beings, according to Nietzsche, must continually rise above their previous limitations. The person who remains controlled by comfort, fear, and weakness never fully develops. The challenge of life is transformation. A boy is not expected to know everything. A boy is not expected to be perfect. But a boy must be given the opportunity to grow. Because the greatest tragedy is not a boy who struggles. The greatest tragedy is a boy who never receives the opportunity to become more. Chapter 2: Ancient Civilizations and the Lost Art of Initiation. How societies transformed boys into men before modern schools, before psychology became a scientific discipline, and before societies had the technology we have today. Human civilizations faced the same challenge. How do we transform a child into a responsible adult? Ancient societies understood something that many modern societies struggle with today. A boy does not automatically become a man because he reaches a certain age. He must experience a transformation. He must be taught what his responsibilities are. He must understand that life is not only about personal desires. He must learn that he belongs to something greater than himself. This process was often called initiation. The part of initiation was not simply a ceremony. It was a psychological transformation. The message was clear. You are leaving one stage of life and entering another. The boy was leaving behind dependence, childhood identity, unlimited freedom, and entering responsibility, discipline, service, adulthood. The anthropologist Arnold van Gennep studied these traditions around the world in his famous work, The Rites of Passage. He identified 3 major stages of transformation. 1. Separation. The individual leaves the old identity behind. The boy is separated from childhood. This separation communicates you are no longer only a child. 2. Transition. This is the most difficult stage. The person enters a period of learning and testing. Here, the individual faces challenges, instruction, discipline, uncertainty. This stage develops character. 3. Incorporation. The individual returns with a new identity. The community recognizes you are now capable of contributing. This pattern appears throughout human history. Different cultures had different methods, but the principle was similar. Transformation requires challenge. Ancient Sparta, building the warrior. One of history's most famous examples comes from ancient Greece. The Spartans created a powerful training system known as agoge. From a young age, Spartan boys entered a state-controlled education system designed to create disciplined citizens and warriors. The purpose was not comfort. The purpose was preparation. Young Spartans were taught endurance, obedience, courage, teamwork, survival skills, loyalty to their society. They experienced hardship intentionally because Spartans believed difficulty revealed character. The Spartan philosophy was, a person who has never faced hardship may collapse when hardship arrives. A person who has learned endurance becomes stronger. However, history also teaches us to examine Sparta critically. Sparta produced extraordinary discipline and military ability, but it also had weaknesses. Extreme social control, limited emotional development, harsh treatment of others. The lesson is important. Strength alone does not create a great man. A complete man requires strength plus wisdom. African tradition. The community creates the man. Many African societies historically understood that raising a child was not only the responsibility of parents, it was the responsibility of the community. The famous principle, it takes a village to raise a child, captures this worldview. A boy was surrounded by parents, grandparents, uncles, elders, community leaders. Each person contributed to his development. Traditional African initiation systems varied greatly between communities. However, many shared similar purposes. They taught identity. The young person learned, who am I? Where do I come from? What is my responsibility? The boy learned, you are not only an individual, you are part of a family and a community. Your actions affect others. Courage. Many traditions included difficult experiences designed to develop patience, endurance, confidence. The purpose was not suffering for its own sake. The purpose was transformation. Wisdom. Elders transferred knowledge about relationships, work, leadership, morality, community values. The deeper lesson: a man does not exist only for himself. A mature man understands his responsibility to others. Ancient Roma. The man of duty. Ancient Rome developed a strong concept of masculine responsibility. The ideal Roman man was expected to demonstrate discipline, loyalty, courage, duty. A central Roman virtue was pietas. This represented devotion to family, ancestors, society, tradition. The Roman understanding of manhood was not simply become powerful. It was become useful. A Roman man was expected to contribute to something larger than himself. The Roman father had an important role. He was responsible for teaching values, family history, responsibility. The goal was to continue the strength of the family line. Japan and the samurai tradition. Another example comes from Japan. The samurai developed a code often associated with Bushido. The word means the way of the warrior, but the true meaning was deeper than fighting. The warrior was expected to develop honor, loyalty, discipline, courage, self-control. A samurai understood, the greatest victory is not defeating another person. The greatest victory is defeating your own weaknesses. A warrior who cannot control anger, fear, selfishness is not truly powerful. Confucian China. The responsible man in Chinese philosophy especially, Confucianism maturity was connected with education, respect, responsibility, social harmony. A person became honorable by fulfilling duties. A mature person understood, I am connected to others. My actions affect my family, my community, society. This idea challenges modern individualism. A person is not only defined by personal achievement, a person is also defined by contribution. Jewish tradition. Responsibility before privilege. Many traditions mark the transition into greater responsibility. One example is bar mitzvah. This ceremony represents increased religious and moral responsibility. The message: growing older means accepting greater obligations. This principle appears across cultures. Adulthood is not simply receiving more freedom, it is accepting more responsibility. The common thread between civilizations. When we compare these societies, we discover something fascinating. Although they differed in religion, geography, culture, traditions, they shared several beliefs. They believed boys needed 1. Mentorship. Someone older must guide them. 2. Challenges, difficulty develops capability. 3. Responsibility. A person must contribute. 4. Identity. A person must know where they belong. 5. Purpose. Life must serve something beyond pleasure. The methods changed. The principle remained. What modern society lost, the modern world has achieved incredible progress. We have technology, medicine, education, communication. But one question remains: have we preserved the process of transformation? Many young men today receive freedom without preparation, information without wisdom, rights without responsibility. The ancient world understood a boy must be introduced to responsibility. The modern world often tells boys, enjoy your freedom, but forgets to teach, carry your responsibility. The challenge of our time is not returning blindly to the past. The challenge is recovering timeless principles, mentorship, discipline, purpose, responsibility, and adapting them to the modern world. Final reflection of Chapter 2. Across thousands of years of human history, one message appears again and again. A boy becomes a man when he learns that life is not only about himself. The child asks, what can I receive? The man asks, what can I contribute? The journey from boyhood to manhood has always required transformation. The question facing our generation is, if ancient societies understood the importance of creating men, why have we become uncertain about the process today? Chapter 3. The psychology of becoming a man, identity, development, and the inner world of boys. The journey from boyhood to manhood is not only a physical process, it is a psychological transformation. A boy does not become a man simply because his body grows stronger. The deeper transformation happens inside the mind. It involves questions such as, who am I? What do I value? What kind of person do I want to become? What responsibilities am I willing to carry? Every man carries a story about himself. The quality of that story influences the quality of his life. The iron world of a boy, a child enters the world with a basic need: to belong. Before a boy thinks about achievement, success, or identity, he needs to know, am I accepted? Am I valued? Do I matter? This foundation is critical because identity grows from belonging. A boy who feels secure develops confidence to explore the world. A boy who constantly feels rejected may spend his life searching for approval. The psychologist Erik Erikson explained that human development happens through different psychological stages. His theory, known as psychosocial development, describes how people face different challenges throughout life. For boys becoming men, several stages are especially important. Stage 1. Trust mistrust, the foundation of security. The earliest years of life create the foundation of trust. A child learns, is the world safe? Can I depend on others? When caregivers provide love, consistency, protection, the child develops trust. But when a child experiences neglect, instability, constant fear, he may develop insecurity. This does not mean a person's future is determined by childhood alone. Human beings can heal and grow, but early experiences influence how people see themselves and others. Stage 2. Autonomy vs. shame, learning independence. As children grow, they begin exploring independence. They want to do things themselves, make choices, test abilities. This is where confidence begins. A child learns, I can do things. However, if a child is constantly made to feel incapable, he may develop fear of failure, dependence, self-doubt. A boy needs guidance, but he also needs opportunities to try. A parent who does everything for a child may unintentionally communicate, you cannot handle life. A parent who guides while allowing responsibility communicates, you are capable. Stage 3. Industry vs. inferiority, building competence. During childhood, boys begin comparing themselves with others. They ask, am I good at something? Can I achieve? Do I have value? This stage is where competence develops. A boy gains confidence through learning skills, completing tasks, solving problems, improving abilities. A dangerous mistake is creating confidence without competence. Telling a child, you are special, is not enough. He must also learn you can work hard, you can improve, you can overcome difficulty. True confidence comes from evidence. A person becomes confident because he has developed capability. Stage 4. Identity vs. confusion, the crisis of adolescence. This is perhaps the most important stage in the journey from boyhood to manhood. During adolescence, a young man begins asking, who am I? What kind of man will I become? What do I believe? The challenge is that young men are surrounded by competing messages. They receive definitions of manhood from family, friends, culture, religion, movies, music, social media. A young man without guidance may borrow identity from whatever group accepts him. This is why mentorship is so important. A boy does not only need information, he needs examples. The 4 archetypes of masculine development, one of the most influential psychological frameworks, comes from Jungian psychology. The writers, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, developed ideas about masculine archetypes in their book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. They argued that mature masculinity involves developing 4 important qualities. 1. The king. The principle of responsibility. The king represents leadership, stability, order, protection. The mature king creates an environment where others can grow. He does not seek power only for himself. He uses power responsibly. The immature king becomes arrogant, controlling, selfish. He says, everything exists for me. The mature king says, I exist to serve something greater. 2. The warrior. The principle of discipline. The warrior represents courage, commitment, sacrifice, focus. The warrior understands that important goals require struggle. He learns, I must do what is necessary, not only what is comfortable. The immature warrior becomes aggressive, destructive, obsessed with conflict. The mature warrior protects. He fights for principles, family, justice, purpose. 3. The magician. The principle of wisdom. The magician represents knowledge, understanding, learning. A mature man does not only act, he thinks. He studies. He seeks wisdom. The immature magician becomes manipulative, deceptive, secretive. The mature magician uses knowledge to help others. 4. The lover. The principle of connection. The lover represents compassion, emotional depth, appreciation, relationships. A mature man understands that life is not only about achievement, it is also about connection. The immature lover becomes controlled by Pleasure, desire, instant satisfaction. The mature lover experiences life deeply while maintaining discipline. The psychology of self-control. One of the greatest differences between childhood and adulthood is self-control. A child often asks, "What do I want now?" A mature person asks, "What consequence will this create?" The psychologist Walter Mischel conducted research on delayed gratification, famously known as the marshmallow test. The research explored whether children could delay a small immediate reward for a larger future reward. The broader lesson: the ability to control impulses is connected with long-term success. This principle applies to manhood. A young man must learn to delay pleasure, to develop skills, to sacrifice comfort, to think about the future. The rule of parapsychology teaches that humans need meaning. A man without purpose often becomes controlled by distractions. He searches for identity through entertainment, approval, possession, status, but purpose gives direction. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl explored this idea deeply in Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl argued that people can endure tremendous suffering when they have a meaningful reason to continue. For young men, purpose answers, "Why should I discipline myself? Why should I work hard? Why should I become better?" Without purpose, discipline feels like punishment. With purpose, discipline becomes preparation. The final lesson of psychology: the journey from boyhood to manhood is an internal transformation. The boy seeks approval, comfort, immediate rewards. The mature man seeks meaning, responsibility, contribution. A boy asks, "Who am I?" A man answers, "I know who I am, and I know what I stand for." The development of manhood is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming intentional. Every day, through choices and actions, a person either moves toward maturity or away from it. Chapter 3: The Psychology of Becoming a Man. Identity, development, and the inner world of boys. The journey from boyhood to manhood is not only a physical process, it is a psychological transformation. A boy does not become a man simply because his body grows stronger. The deeper transformation happens inside the mind. It involves questions such as, "Who am I? What do I value? What kind of person do I want to become? What responsibilities am I willing to carry?" Every man carries a story about himself. The quality of that story influences the quality of his life. The inner world of a boy. A child enters the world with a basic need: to belong. Before a boy thinks about achievement, success, or identity, he needs to know, am I accepted? Am I valued? Do I matter? This foundation is critical because identity grows from belonging. A boy who feels secure develops confidence to explore the world. A boy who constantly feels rejected may spend his life searching for approval. The psychologist Erik Erikson explained that human development happens through different psychological stages. His theory, known as psychosocial development, describes how people face different challenges throughout life. For boys becoming men, several stages are especially important. Stage 1. Trust is mistrust, the foundation of security. The earliest years of life create the foundation of trust. A child learns, is the world safe? Can I depend on others? When caregivers provide love, consistency, protection, the child develops trust. But when a child experiences neglect, instability, constant fear, he may develop insecurity. This does not mean a person's future is determined by childhood alone. Human beings can heal and grow, but early experiences influence how people see themselves and others. Stage 2. Autonomy vs. shame. Learning independence. As children grow, they begin exploring independence. They want to do things themselves, make choices, test abilities. This is where confidence begins. A child learns, I can do things. However, if a child is constantly made to feel incapable, he may develop fear of failure, dependence, self-doubt. A boy needs guidance, but he also needs opportunities to try. A parent who does everything for a child may unintentionally communicate, "You cannot handle life." A parent who guides while allowing responsibility communicates, "You are capable." Stage 3. Industry vs. inferiority. Building competence. During childhood, boys begin comparing themselves with others. They ask, am I good at something? Can I achieve? Do I have value? This stage is where competence develops. A boy gains confidence through learning skills, completing tasks, solving problems, improving abilities. A dangerous mistake is creating confidence without competence. Telling a child, you are special, is not enough. He must also learn, you can work hard, you can improve, you can overcome difficulty. True confidence comes from evidence. A person becomes confident because he has developed capability. Stage 4, Identity v Scroll Confusion, the crisis of adolescence. This is perhaps the most important stage in the journey from boyhood to manhood. During adolescence, a young man begins asking, who am I? What kind of man will I become? What do I believe? The challenge is that young men are surrounded by competing messages. They receive definitions of manhood from family, friends, culture, religion, movies, music, social media. A young man without guidance may borrow identity from whatever group accepts him. This is why mentorship is so important. A boy does not only need information, he needs examples. The 4 archetypes of masculine development. One of the most influential psychological frameworks comes from Jungian psychology. The writers, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, developed ideas about masculine archetypes in their book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. They argued that mature masculinity involves developing 4 important qualities. 1. The king, the principle of responsibility. The king represents leadership, stability, order, protection. The mature king creates an environment where others can grow. He does not seek power only for himself. He uses power responsibly. The immature king becomes arrogant, controlling, selfish. He says, everything exists for me. The mature king says, I exist to serve something greater. 2. The warrior, the principle of discipline. The warrior represents courage, commitment, sacrifice, focus. The warrior understands that important goals require struggle. He learns, I must do what is necessary, not only what is comfortable. The immature warrior becomes aggressive, destructive, obsessed with conflict. The mature warrior protects. He fights for principles, family, justice, purpose. 3. The magician, the principle of wisdom. The magician represents knowledge, understanding, learning. A mature man does not only act, he thinks. He studies. He seeks wisdom. The immature magician becomes manipulative, deceptive, secretive. The mature magician uses knowledge to help others. 4. The lover, the principle of connection. The lover represents compassion, emotional depth, appreciation, relationships. A mature man understands that life is not only about achievement, it is also about connection. The immature lover becomes controlled by pleasure, desire, instant satisfaction. The mature lover experiences life deeply while maintaining discipline. The psychology of self-control. One of the greatest differences between childhood and adulthood is self-control. A child often asks, what do I want now? A mature person asks, what consequence will this create? The psychologist Walter Mischel conducted research on delayed gratification, famously known as the marshmallow test. The research explored whether children could delay a small immediate reward for a larger future reward. The broader lesson, the ability to control impulses, is connected with long-term success. This principle applies to manhood. A young man must learn to delay pleasure, to develop skills, to sacrifice comfort, to think about the future. The row of Pert's psychology teaches that humans need meaning. A man without purpose often becomes controlled by distractions. He searches for identity through entertainment, approval, possession, status. But purpose gives direction. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl explored this idea deeply in Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl argued that people can endure tremendous suffering when they have a meaningful reason to continue. For young men, purpose answers, why should I discipline myself? Why should I work hard? Why should I become better? Without purpose, discipline feels like punishment. With purpose, discipline becomes preparation. The final lesson of psychology. The journey from boyhood to manhood is an internal transformation. The boy seeks approval, comfort, immediate rewards. The mature man seeks meaning, responsibility, contribution. A boy asks, who am I? A man answers, I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. The development of manhood is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming intentional. Every day, through choices and actions, a person either moves toward maturity or away from it. Chapter 4. The father, the mentor, and the community. The people who shape a man. A man is not created in isolation. Although personal choices are important, no person develops alone. Every great man was influenced by someone. Behind every person who developed wisdom, courage, and discipline, there was usually a teacher, a parent, a mentor, or a community that helped shape them. The journey from boyhood to manhood is not a journey that a boy walks alone. It is a journey where others help him discover who he can become. The first teacher, the family. Before a boy learns from books, schools, or society, he learns from the environment around him. The first lessons of life are usually taught at home. A child watches how adults communicate, how they handle problems, how they treat others, how they respond to failure. Children are not only listening to instructions, they are observing examples. A father can tell his son, "Be responsible." But the son learns responsibility by watching whether his father keeps his promises. A father can say, "Control your anger." But the son learns emotional control by watching how his father responds under pressure. A father can say, "Work hard." But the son learns work ethic by observing commitment. The greatest lesson a father gives is not a speech, it is his example. The role of the father throughout history. Fathers have traditionally played an important role in guiding boys toward adulthood. This role is not simply about providing money. Provision is important, but fatherhood is much deeper. A father provides 1. Identity. A boy needs to know, where do I come from? What family do I belong to? What values guide me? 2. Confidence. A father communicates, you are capable. You can face challenges, you can become better. 3. Boundaries. A father teaches, not every desire should be followed. Actions have consequences. 4. Direction. A father helps a boy understand, what kind of man should I become? The absence of guidance creates confusion. A boy may search for answers from friends, social media, celebrities, unhealthy influences. The difference between a father and a biological connection. An important distinction must be made. Being a biological father and being a father figure are not always identical. Fatherhood is not only about creating a child, it is about helping create the person that child becomes. A father figure gives guidance, protection, encouragement, correction, wisdom. This is why many successful people can identify someone who shaped them: a teacher, a coach, a grandfather, a community leader, a mentor. The principle is, boys need examples of mature adulthood. The importance of mentors. A mentor is someone who has walked further along the road and helps another person navigate the journey. A mentor does something powerful. He sees potential before the young person fully sees it. A good mentor provides wisdom. I have experienced this. Learn from my mistakes. Accountability. You said you wanted this goal. Are your actions matching your words? Encouragement. You are capable of more. Correction. This path will harm you. Choose another. A mentor does not create dependence. A mentor creates independence. The goal is not to make someone follow forever. The goal is to help someone become capable of leading themselves. Great men and their mentors' history provides many examples of mentorship. Aristotle and Alexander the Great. One of the most famous teacher-student relationships was between Aristotle and Alexander the Great. Aristotle taught Alexander philosophy, science, politics, ethics. Alexander became one of history's greatest military leaders. But before he conquered territories, he was shaped by education. The lesson: power without wisdom is dangerous. Knowledge must guide strength. Socrates and Plato. Another important example: Socrates influenced Plato. Socrates taught through questioning. He encouraged people to examine themselves. His famous principle: an unexamined life is not worth living. The lesson: a mentor does not simply give answers. A mentor teaches someone how to think. The community is a second family. Many traditional societies understood a powerful idea. A child belongs not only to parents, a child belongs to a community. The African saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," reflects this understanding. In traditional communities, an uncle might teach responsibility, an elder might teach wisdom, a craftsman might teach skills, a warrior might teach courage, a spiritual leader might teach values. The boy was surrounded by different examples of adulthood. Modern societies often place enormous responsibility on parents alone. But historically, communities understood raising the next generation is everyone's responsibility. When the chain breaks, a major challenge today is the weakening of mentorship systems. Many young men experience fewer positive male role models, disconnected communities, digital isolation, lack of guidance. The problem is not simply that boys lack information. The problem is that information without wisdom can be dangerous. A young man can watch thousands of videos about success, but he still needs someone who knows him personally. Someone who can say, "I know your strengths. I see your weaknesses. I believe you can improve." Thereof teachers influence generations. A teacher does not only transfer knowledge. A teacher shapes confidence. A teacher can change how a student sees himself. A boy who believes, "I am not intelligent," may meet a teacher who says, "You can learn." That single belief can change a life. The best teachers do not only prepare students for exams, they prepare them for life. They teach discipline, curiosity, responsibility, cooperation. Coaches and the development of character sports provide one of the oldest forms of character training. A good coach teaches more than physical ability. A coach teaches discipline, showing up even when motivation disappears. Teamwork, understanding that success is not only individual. Handling failure, learning. Failure is information, not identity. Commitment, understanding that improvement requires consistency. Many young men remember coaches not because of the games they won. They remember because someone helped them become better people. The responsibility of men have ground. The journey does not end when a boy becomes a man. A mature man has another responsibility: to help create more mature men. Every generation receives knowledge from those before it. Then it must decide, will we continue the chain or will we break it? A man who refuses to guide younger people keeps wisdom trapped inside himself. A man who teaches others multiplies his impact. The circle of development. The process is continuous. A father guides a son, a mentor guides a young man, a teacher guides a student, a community guides its members. The young man eventually becomes a father, a mentor, a teacher, a leader. The ultimate measure of maturity is not, how much did I achieve? The deeper question is, who became better because I was here? Final reflection of Chapter 4. A boy becomes a man through relationships. He learns strength from examples. He learns responsibility through expectations. He learns wisdom through guidance. He learns purpose through service. No man truly creates himself alone. Behind every mature man is a chain of people who invested in him, and once he becomes mature, his responsibility is to continue that chain. Chapter 5. The Battle of Manhood. Mastering fear, anger, ego, desire, and the self. The greatest battles a man will ever fight are not always against enemies outside himself. The greatest battles often happen within. Before a man can lead a family, build a business, serve a community, or influence others, he must first learn one of the hardest lessons in life. He must learn to govern himself. A man who cannot control himself will eventually be controlled by something else. Anger, fear, pride, addiction, approval from others, uncontrolled desires. Throughout history, wise societies understood this principle. The greatest warrior was not simply the person who could defeat others. The greatest warrior was the person who could defeat himself. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato described the human soul as something that requires harmony between different forces. Reason must guide desire. Wisdom must guide emotion. Without balance, a person becomes controlled by impulses. The first battle, mastering yourself. A boy often lives according to immediate feelings. If he wants something, he wants it now. If he is angry, he reacts. If he is afraid, he avoids. This is natural in childhood, but maturity requires a transformation. A man learns, my emotions are real, but they do not have to control my actions. This is one of the deepest differences between a child and a mature adult. A child asks, how do I feel? Man asks, what is the right thing to do? The Stoic lesson. Control what you can. One of the strongest philosophical traditions about self-mastery is Stoicism. The Stoic philosophers, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, taught that a person's greatest freedom comes from controlling his own mind. Epictetus taught a powerful principle: some things are within our control, other things are not. A wise person focuses energy on what he can influence. A man cannot control what people think about him, the past, every external event, but he can control his actions, his choices, his attitude, his response. This principle separates mature men from immature men. The immature person says, life is happening to me. The mature person says, I am responsible for how I respond. The battle against fear. Every man experiences fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of losing. The difference between courage and cowardice is not the presence of fear. It is the response to fear. A boy may think, when fear appears, I must run. A man learns fear is a signal, not a command. The philosopher Aristotle described courage as a balance. On one side, cowardice, the refusal to act because of fear. On the other side, recklessness, acting without wisdom. The courageous person understands danger but chooses action when action is necessary. Every great man in history experienced fear. Nelson Mandela experienced the fear of imprisonment. Abraham Lincoln experienced the fear of failure and national collapse. Viktor Frankl experienced unimaginable suffering. Their greatness was not that they felt no fear. Their greatness was that responsibility was greater than fear. The battle against anger. Anger is one of the most powerful human emotions. It can reveal injustice, danger, betrayal, frustration, but uncontrolled anger destroys the person carrying it. A man who cannot control his anger becomes a prisoner of his emotions. His anger decides what he says, what he does, how he treats people. The Roman philosopher Seneca studied anger deeply in his work. On anger, he argued that anger often destroys judgment. The angry person believes he is powerful, but often he has lost control. True strength is not the ability to intimidate people. True strength is the ability to remain calm when others lose control. A boy reacts, a man responds. The battle against ego. One of the greatest enemies of personal growth is ego. Ego tells a person, you must always be right. You must never apologize. You must prove yourself. You must be respected by everyone. The problem with ego is that it prevents learning. A person who believes he knows everything cannot grow. The writer, Robert Greene, has explored ego, power, and human behavior extensively. In The Laws of Human Nature, he examines how emotions, weaknesses, and unconscious patterns influence human decisions. One of the greatest forms of maturity is self-awareness. A mature man can say, I was wrong. I need to improve. I do not know everything. Humility is not weakness. Humility is the foundation of growth. The battle against desire. Every person has desires. The desire for pleasure, recognition, wealth, comfort, status. Desire itself is not evil. The problem begins when desire becomes the master. A man who cannot control desire becomes controlled by desire. This appears in many forms: addiction, irresponsible spending, unhealthy relationships, laziness, chasing approval. The disciplined man asks, will this choice strengthen my future or weaken it? The boy asks, what do I want now? The man asks, what does my future require from me? Delayed gratification. The mark of maturity. One of the strongest indicators of maturity is the ability to sacrifice today for tomorrow. The child wants the reward now. The adult understands the greater reward may require patience. The psychologist, Walter Mischel, studied delayed gratification through the famous marshmallow test. The broader lesson: self-control influences many areas of life. A person who can delay immediate pleasure often develops greater ability to achieve long-term goals. This principle applies to education, relationships, careers, finances, health. The warrior within every man needs a warrior spirit, but the warrior spirit must be guided by wisdom. The immature warrior says, I want to prove myself. The mature warrior says, I have something worth protecting. The warrior develops discipline, doing what must be done, courage, acting despite difficulty, loyalty, standing by values and commitments, sacrifice, accepting short-term difficulty for long-term purpose. The warrior does not seek conflict. The warrior prepares for responsibility. The difference between power and mastery. Many people misunderstand power. They think power means controlling others, being feared, having status, but the deepest form of power is self-mastery. A man who controls others but cannot control himself is not truly powerful. A man who controls himself has freedom. A person who cannot control anger is weak. A person who cannot control spending is weak. A person who cannot control impulses is weak. Self-control is the foundation of all other achievements. The final transformation, the inner journey of manhood, can be summarized. The boy is controlled by the world around him. The man learns to control himself. The boy follows every emotion. The man understands his emotions. The boy seeks approval. The man seeks purpose. The boy wants power over others. The man seeks mastery over himself. Final lesson of Chapter 5. Before a man can build anything outside himself, he must build himself. Before he can lead others, he must lead himself. Before he can bring order to the world, he must bring order to his own mind. The greatest victory a man can achieve is not defeating another person. It is becoming the person he was capable of becoming. Chapter 6. Men forged through hardship. Viktor Frankl, Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Malcolm X, and the transforming power of suffering throughout human history. One truth has appeared repeatedly. Great men are rarely created in comfort. They are often shaped during moments of difficulty. Hardship has a way of revealing a person's character. It removes distractions. It tests beliefs. It forces difficult questions. Who am I when everything is taken away? What remains when comfort disappears? What values are strong enough to survive suffering? However, we must understand something important. Suffering alone does not create greatness. Many people suffer and become bitter. Others suffer and become stronger. The difference is not only the hardship itself. The difference is meaning, response, discipline, purpose. The psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, understood this deeply. His life became one of history's greatest examples of transformation through suffering. Viktor Frankl, finding meaning when everything is lost. Before the Second World War, Viktor Frankl was already an accomplished psychiatrist. He studied the human mind. He worked with people experiencing psychological struggles. But his greatest lessons came from his own suffering. During the Holocaust, Frankl was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. He lost almost everything. His freedom, his possessions, his security, many people he loved. He witnessed unimaginable cruelty. Many prisoners experienced the same terrible conditions. But Frankl noticed something remarkable. Some people maintained inner strength despite their circumstances. Others lost all hope. This led him to a profound conclusion. Human beings have a final freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude toward their circumstances. In his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argued that people can survive extraordinary suffering when they have meaning. A person who has a reason to continue can endure tremendous difficulty. This lesson is central to manhood. A boy often believes, I need life to be easy before I can be strong. A man understands. Strength is developed by carrying meaningful responsibilities even when life is difficult. Frankl's transformation was suffering, meaning, purpose, strength. Nelson Mandela, the prison that created a leader. Few stories demonstrate transformation like the life of Nelson Mandela. Mandela spent 27 years in prison because of his opposition to apartheid. A person could easily leave such an experience consumed by hatred, revenge, bitterness, but Mandela emerged differently. The prison years became a period of reflection and transformation. The young activist who entered prison was not the same man who left. He developed patience, strategic thinking, emotional control, forgiveness. Mandela later became the first democratically elected president of South Africa. But perhaps his greatest achievement was not political. It was his ability to prevent a nation from being destroyed by revenge. He understood a powerful principle. A person who cannot control hatred becomes controlled by hatred. The immature response to suffering is, you hurt me so I will destroy you. The mature response is, I will transform my suffering into something greater. Mandela represents anger, discipline, wisdom, leadership. Abraham Lincoln, failure, responsibility, and perseverance. The story of Abraham Lincoln teaches another important lesson. Greatness is often built through repeated failure. Lincoln's early life was filled with difficulties. He experienced financial struggles, political defeats, personal suffering. Many people would have abandoned their ambitions, but Lincoln continued. Each failure developed qualities that later became essential. Patience, humility, resilience, determination. When Lincoln became president, he faced perhaps the greatest crisis in American history, the Civil War. The decisions he made affected millions of lives. Leadership revealed his maturity. A weaker person may have abandoned responsibility because the burden was too heavy. Lincoln carried it. This is one of the defining characteristics of manhood. A man accepts responsibility, even when the responsibility is difficult. The boy says, this problem is too big. The man says, this problem must be faced. Malcolm X, from chaos to purpose, the transformation of Malcolm X shows that a person's past does not have to determine their future. Malcolm Little experienced a difficult childhood. He faced instability, loss, confusion. As a young man, he became involved in criminal activities. Eventually, he was imprisoned, but prison became a turning point. Instead of wasting time, he educated himself. He read extensively. He developed discipline. He transformed his mind. The person who entered prison was not the same person who left. He became a powerful speaker, an influential thinker, an advocate for social change. His story demonstrates a man is not only his past, a man is also his ability to transform. The pattern of transformation. When we examine these lives, we discover a common pattern. Stage 1. Disruption. Something breaks the old way of living. Examples: prison, failure, suffering, loss. Stage 2. Reflection. The person asks, who am I? What matters? What must change? Stage 3. Discipline. The person develops knowledge, character, self-control. Stage 4. Purpose. The person begins serving something greater than himself. This pattern appears throughout history. Suffering as a teacher, hardship teaches lessons comfort cannot teach. Comfort teaches, I am okay. Difficulty teaches, I am capable. Failure teaches humility. Loss teaches appreciation. Responsibility teaches maturity. Challenges reveal character. But again, the goal is not to seek unnecessary suffering. The goal is to understand that difficulties are part of life. A person who learns how to respond to difficulty becomes stronger. The difference between pain and growth: two people can experience the same hardship. One becomes bitter, another becomes wiser. Why? Because they interpret suffering differently. The bitter person asks, why did this happen to me? The mature person asks, what can this teach me? This does not mean ignoring pain. It means refusing to allow pain to define the entire story. The warrior's lesson throughout history. Warriors understood preparation. A soldier trains before battle. An athlete trains before competition. A professional develops skills before responsibility increases. Life also requires preparation. A man who refuses to develop himself will struggle when challenges arrive. The purpose of discipline is not to make life easy. The purpose of discipline is to make yourself capable. The final lesson of Chapter 6, the lives of Frankl, Mandela, Lincoln, and Malcolm X reveal one powerful truth. A person's greatest difficulties can become the foundation of their greatest transformation. Hardship can break a person, or hardship can build a person. The difference is meaning, choice, character. A boy often asks, how can I avoid suffering? A man asks, how can I become stronger through what I face? The journey into manhood requires accepting one reality: life will test you. The question is not whether challenges will come. The question is, who will you become when they arrive? Chapter 7, the crisis of modern boys' technology, identity, loneliness, and the search for meaning in the 21st century. Human history has changed dramatically. A boy growing up today enters a world completely different from the world of previous generations. He has access to unlimited information, global communication, advanced technology, educational opportunities. The modern world has created incredible possibilities, but it has also created new challenges. The question facing our generation is, are we giving boys more opportunities, or are we giving them more confusion? For thousands of years, societies had clear systems for guiding young men. Boys learned from families, elders, communities, traditions, apprenticeships. They understood, this is what is expected of me. Today, many young men experience a different reality. They have more freedom than ever before. But freedom without direction can become confusion. The disappearance of clear pathways. In many traditional societies, the transition from boyhood to adulthood was visible. There were ceremonies, there were responsibilities, there were expectations. A young person knew, when I complete this stage, I have entered another stage. Modern society has weakened many of these transitions. A young man may finish school. He may become legally an adult. He may gain independence. But internally, he may still ask, who am I? What is my purpose? What kind of man should I become? This creates what many psychologists describe as an identity struggle. The search for identity. The psychologist Erik Erikson identified adolescence as a crucial period of identity formation. Young people must answer, who am I? What do I believe? Where do I belong? A person who develops a strong identity has values, direction, confidence. A person who struggles with identity may search for belonging anywhere it is offered. This is why young men are vulnerable to unhealthy influences. A person without purpose can easily be attracted to anything that provides recognition, belonging, status, excitement. The digital world, the new teacher. For most of human history, young people learned primarily from people around them. Today, many boys learn from screens. Their teachers include social media influencers, online communities, video platforms, celebrities, algorithms. Technology itself is not the enemy. Technology can educate, it can connect people, it can create opportunities. The challenge is, who controls the message? An algorithm does not ask, will this make this young man wiser? It asks, will this keep him engaged? A young man searching for identity may encounter positive influences, educators, professionals, mentors, but he may also encounter unrealistic lifestyles, unhealthy beliefs, extreme communities, false ideas of success. The problem of gratification. One of the biggest psychological challenges today is the search for approval online. A young person can measure his worth through likes, followers, comments, online popularity, but digital approval is temporary. A person may receive thousands of likes and still feel empty. Why? Because human beings do not only need attention, they need meaning. The philosopher Aristotle argued that humans seek a state of flourishing, which he called eudaimonia. True fulfillment comes not from temporary pleasure, but from developing virtue and living according to purpose. A young man who only seeks approval becomes controlled by the opinions of others. A mature man builds value from within. The rise of loneliness. One of the greatest challenges facing modern society is isolation. A person can be connected digitally and still feel alone. A young man may have hundreds of online contacts, constant communication, but lack deep friendships, mentorship, meaningful community. Human beings require real connection. We need conversation, friendship, guidance, belonging. A boy without community may search for belonging in unhealthy places. The father and mentorship gap. One major concern in modern discussions about boys is the reduction of consistent mentorship. Many boys grow up without enough positive male guidance. This does not mean every boy without a father is destined for failure. Many people overcome difficult circumstances, but research and experience show that supportive relationships matter. A young man needs people who can say, "I know your potential, I see your mistakes, I expect more from you." Without guidance, boys often learn masculinity from entertainment, internet personalities, peer pressure. The question becomes, who is teaching boys what strength means? The confusion about masculinity. Modern boys receive conflicting messages. Some messages say, to be a man means to dominate. Others say, masculinity itself is the problem. Both extremes create confusion. A healthier approach is to distinguish between immature masculinity and mature masculinity. Immature masculinity, it seeks attention, dominance, approval, control. It says, I must prove I am powerful. Mature masculinity, it seeks responsibility, service, discipline, protection. It says, I must become capable enough to serve others. The goal is not removing masculinity. The goal is developing it. The problem of instant gratification. Modern technology has created a world of immediate rewards. Young people can instantly access entertainment, food, information, social interaction, but maturity requires patience. A man must learn, not every desire deserves immediate satisfaction. The psychologist Walter Mischel studied delayed gratification through the famous marshmallow test. The lesson applies strongly to young men. Success requires the ability to sacrifice today for tomorrow. The young man who cannot delay pleasure struggles with finances, relationships, career development, personal growth. The danger of false success. Modern culture often presents a distorted picture of success. It may suggest success means wealth, fame, appearance, popularity, but history teaches a different lesson. Many respected men were not remembered because they had the most possessions. They were remembered because they carried responsibility. Nelson Mandela is remembered not because of wealth. He is remembered because of sacrifice. Viktor Frankl is remembered because of meaning. Greatness is not measured only by what a person gains. It is measured by what a person contributes. Rebuilding the path for boys. The solution is not rejecting modern society. The solution is rebuilding what has been lost. Boys need 1. Purpose, a reason to develop themselves. 2. Mentorship, people who guide them. 3. Responsibility, opportunities to contribute. 4. Challenges, experiences that build confidence. 5. Community, people who support growth. The question of our time. Previous generations asked, how do we prepare boys for adulthood? Modern society must ask the same question, because technology cannot replace wisdom. Information cannot replace mentorship. Freedom cannot replace responsibility. Final lesson of Chapter 7. The greatest challenge facing boys today is not a lack of opportunities. It is a lack of direction. A boy can access the entire world through a screen, but he still needs someone to teach him how to navigate life. The journey from boyhood to manhood requires more than knowledge. It requires purpose, discipline, community, responsibility. The question is not, can boys become men in the modern world? They can. The real question is, will we intentionally create the environment that allows them to become the best men they can be? Chapter 8. Healthy masculinity, strength, compassion, leadership, and the balance between power and responsibility. One of the greatest debates of the modern age is, what does it mean to be a man? Throughout history, societies have developed different ideas about masculinity. Some emphasized strength, courage, protection, leadership, provision. Others today emphasize emotional intelligence, communication, cooperation, equality, compassion. The challenge is that many discussions about masculinity become extreme. Some people believe masculinity must be completely restored to traditional forms. Others believe traditional masculinity itself is the problem. Both extremes miss something important. The real question is not, should masculinity exist? The real question is, what kind of masculinity produces men who improve the world? The difference between immature and masculinity itself is a form of human energy. Like any form of power, it can be used positively or negatively. Fire can warm a home. Fire can also destroy a home. The issue is not the existence of fire. The issue is whether it is controlled. The same applies to masculine qualities. A immature masculinity often seeks domination, attention, control, approval, superiority. It says, I need others to know I am powerful. Mature masculinity seeks responsibility, protection, service, wisdom, contribution. It says, I must develop myself so I can become useful to others. The difference is not strength versus weakness. The difference is strength without character versus strength guided by character. Strength without wisdom is dangerous. A powerful man without wisdom can cause harm. History has many examples of people who possessed intelligence, influence, authority, but lacked moral discipline. Power reveals character. A person with power does not suddenly become different. Power often reveals what was already inside. This is why ancient philosophers emphasized virtue. The philosopher Aristotle argued that excellence comes from developing good character. A person does not become virtuous by knowing what is right. A person becomes virtuous by repeatedly practicing what is right. The protector, not the controller. One of the oldest ideas connected to masculinity is protection. Men have often been expected to protect families, communities, societies, but protection must be understood correctly. Protection is not control. An immature man says, I protect because I own. A mature man says, I protect because I care. Control is motivated by fear. Protection is motivated by responsibility. A controlling person asks, how can I make people obey me? A responsible person asks, how can I create safety for others? The warrior and the peacemaker. Many people misunderstand the warrior. They imagine a warrior as someone who seeks conflict. But historically, the warrior's highest purpose was not destruction. It was protection. The warrior develops courage, discipline, sacrifice, loyalty. But the mature warrior also develops restraint, wisdom, compassion. A man who is always looking for a fight is not strong. Often, he is controlled by insecurity. The strongest person is often the one who has the ability to cause harm but chooses responsibility instead. Emotional maturity, the strength to feel. For many generations, boys were taught, men do not cry. Men should not show weakness. This created confusion about emotions. The problem is not having emotions. The problem is being controlled by emotions. A mature man understands anger is information. Fear is information. Sadness is information. Joy is information. Emotional maturity means, I understand what I feel and I choose how to respond. The psychologist Daniel Goleman popularized the concept of emotional intelligence. He argued that success in life depends not only on intellectual ability but also on understanding and managing emotions. A man who cannot understand his emotions may damage relationships, even if he is intelligent. The humble man, one of the strongest signs of maturity is humility. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means seeing yourself accurately. The arrogant man believes, I already know everything. The humble man believes, I can continue learning. Humility allows growth. A man who cannot admit mistakes cannot improve. A man who cannot accept correction cannot mature. The Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this principle. Despite holding enormous power, his writings show a constant effort to discipline his own mind and remember his responsibilities. The provider, beyond money. Another traditional expectation of men is providing. This idea is often misunderstood. Providing is not only financial. A man can provide stability, wisdom, encouragement, emotional support, protection, leadership. Money matters. A responsible man should develop the ability to contribute economically. But a man who only provides money while neglecting relationships has misunderstood his role. A child does not only need a financial provider. A child needs presence, guidance, attention, love, the leader which serves. Many people associate leadership with power, but the greatest leaders understand leadership as service. A poor leader asks, how can people serve me? A great leader asks, how can I serve people? This principle appears throughout history. The greatest leaders carried responsibility before receiving honor. Leadership requires sacrifice, patience, courage, accountability, the four balances of a mature man. A mature man learns balance. 1. Strength and gentleness, strong enough to protect, gentle enough to care. 2. Confidence and humility, confident enough to act, humble enough to learn. 3. Discipline and compassion, disciplined enough to improve, compassionate enough to understand others. 4. Independence and connection, able to stand alone, wise enough to value relationships. The role of men in society. A healthy society needs men who understand their role, not as rulers over others, but as contributors. A mature man asks, how can I make my family stronger? How can I improve my community? How can I leave the world better than I found it? The purpose of becoming a man is not personal greatness alone. It is becoming capable of creating greatness around you. Final lesson of Chapter 8. Healthy masculinity is not about proving superiority. It is about developing responsibility. It is not about making others fear you. It is about becoming someone others can trust. It is not about controlling people. It is about controlling yourself. The mature man is strong but not cruel, confident but not arrogant, ambitious but not selfish, emotional but not controlled by emotions, powerful but responsible. The journey from boyhood to manhood is not complete when a man gains strength. It is complete when he learns how to use strength wisely. Chapter 9. Love, Family, and Legacy. Why a man's greatest achievement is what he builds beyond himself. A man can achieve many things in life. He can build a successful career. He can accumulate wealth. He can gain influence. He can become respected in society. But eventually, every man must face one important question. What remains when all achievements are gone? What remains after the money has been spent? What remains after the titles disappear? What remains after people no longer remember his success? The answer is the lives he influenced, the people he helped, the values he passed on, the legacy he created. The journey from boyhood to manhood reaches its highest point when a man moves beyond himself. A boy thinks, what can I receive? A young man thinks, what can I achieve? A mature man asks, what can I build that will continue beyond me? From self and development to surface, the early stages of becoming a man involve developing yourself. A young man must build discipline, knowledge, skills, confidence, stability. But this is not the final destination. Self-development is preparation for contribution. A person who only improves himself but never serves others has misunderstood maturity. The purpose of becoming stronger is not only personal benefit. Strength exists so that something valuable can be protected and built. The philosopher Aristotle believed that human beings achieve fulfillment through living a life of virtue and purpose. A good life is not simply a pleasurable life. It is a meaningful life. Love as a responsibility. Many young people understand love primarily as emotion. They think, I love someone because they make me feel good. But mature love is deeper. Love is not only a feeling. Love is a commitment. The philosopher Erich Fromm explored this idea in The Art of Loving. Fromm argued that love requires care, responsibility, knowledge, effort. A mature man understands. Love requires sacrifice. Love requires patience. Love requires choosing another person's well-being even when it is inconvenient. A boy may say, I love you because you make me happy. A man says, I love you, and I am willing to contribute to your well-being. The man as a husband and partner. A healthy relationship requires more than attraction. It requires character. A mature partner brings commitment, the ability to remain faithful and dependable. Communication, the ability to listen and express oneself honestly. Responsibility, the willingness to solve problems instead of avoiding them. Emotional maturity, the ability to handle disagreements without destruction. A relationship is not tested only during easy times. It is tested during stress, financial pressure, disagreement, uncertainty. A mature man does not run from difficulty. He learns how to face difficulty with another person. Fatherhood, creating the next generation. One of the greatest responsibilities a man can accept is fatherhood. A father does not simply create a child. He influences the future. Every child carries something from the generations before. A father passes on values, beliefs, habits, emotional patterns, wisdom. A father asks, what kind of world am I creating for my children? A child does not only need food and shelter. A child needs security, guidance, encouragement, discipline, love, the three gifts a father gives. A powerful way to understand fatherhood is through three gifts. 1. Roots. A child needs identity. Roots answer, where do I belong? Where did I come from? What values guide my life? A child without roots may search for identity everywhere. 2. Wings. A child also needs independence. Wings answer, can I face the world? Can I make decisions? Can I build my own life? A father must not create dependence forever. The goal is not to keep a child under protection. The goal is to prepare the child to stand. 3. Wisdom. A child needs guidance. Wisdom answers, how should I live? What choices matter? What consequences follow my actions? A father who provides roots, wings, and wisdom gives one of the greatest gifts possible. The danger of a man never matures. A man who never develops maturity often carries childhood into adulthood. He may seek constant attention, pleasure, without responsibility, freedom, without commitment, rights, without duties. He may ask, what can others do for me? Instead of, what can I contribute? This creates problems not only for himself, but for everyone connected to him. A man who refuses responsibility eventually becomes a burden. A man who accepts responsibility becomes a source of strength. Legacy. The final measure of a man. Many people measure success by what they own. But history often remembers people differently. It remembers teachers who changed lives, leaders who served people, parents who raised great children, mentors who developed others. The greatest legacy is not an object. It is an influence. A wealthy man can leave money. A wise man can leave knowledge. A good man can leave better people. The question is not, how much did I collect? The deeper question is, how much did I contribute? The circle of generations. Every man is part of a chain. Before him were parents, grandparents, ancestors. After him will come children, grandchildren, future generations. A mature man understands, I inherited something, and I have a responsibility to pass something forward. This is why personal choices matter. A man's decisions do not affect only himself. They influence generations. The example of Nelson Mandela. The life of Nelson Mandela shows this principle. After decades of imprisonment, Mandela had every reason to focus on personal revenge. Instead, he focused on rebuilding a nation. He understood, a great man does not only defeat enemies, a great man creates a better future. The example of Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl also demonstrates this. After experiencing extreme suffering, he chose to use his experiences to help others understand meaning and resilience. He transformed personal pain into service. The final transformation of manhood. The complete journey looks like this. The boy seeks protection. Adult. The young man seeks identity. The adult man seeks achievement. The mature man seeks contribution. The boy asks, who will help me? The man asks, who can I help? The boy seeks to be respected. The man seeks to be worthy of respect. The boy wants to be remembered. The man builds something worth remembering. Final lesson of Chapter 9. The purpose of becoming a man is not simply to become powerful. It is to become responsible enough to use power wisely. A man's greatest success is not measured only by what he builds for himself. It is measured by what he builds for others. A true man leaves behind not only possessions, but principles, not only wealth, but wisdom, not only achievements, but people who became better because he lived. Chapter 10. Creating men for the future. The blueprint for raising responsible, strong, and purposeful men. Every generation faces the same responsibility. What kind of people are we preparing for the future? A society is not built only through technology, buildings, economies, and institutions. A society is built through people, and the character of future generations depends on how we raise today's children. The question of this entire journey has been, how does a boy become a man? After examining history, psychology, philosophy, and the lives of remarkable people, we can now answer, a boy becomes a man when he learns to transform. Dependence into responsibility, weakness, into strength, confusion, into purpose, desire, into discipline, ability, into service, the first principle. A man must know he is. Every great journey begins with identity. A person who does not know who he is will constantly search for validation from others. He will be controlled by opinions, trends, social pressure, temporary rewards. A mature man understands. My value does not come only from what people say about me. My value comes from my character and my contribution. The psychologist Erik Erikson showed that identity formation is one of the most important challenges of human development. A young man must answer, Who am I? What do I believe? What principles guide my decisions? Without identity, a person can have freedom but no direction. The second principle, discipline creates freedom. Many people misunderstand discipline. They believe discipline removes freedom, but discipline creates freedom. A person who controls his body has more physical freedom. A person who controls his finances has more financial freedom. A person who controls his emotions has more relationship freedom. Discipline means doing what is necessary even when motivation disappears. A successful athlete does not train only when excited. A successful student does not study only when inspired. A responsible man does not fulfill his duties only when convenient. Discipline transforms potential into ability. The third principle, responsibility is the foundation of manhood. A boy often wants freedom without responsibility. A man understands freedom and responsibility are connected. The philosopher Jordan Peterson has emphasized responsibility as a central part of meaning and personal development. His message, a meaningful life requires accepting responsibility. A man must take responsibility for his choices, his health, his relationships, his skills. His future responsibility is not a burden that destroys freedom. It is the structure that gives life meaning. The fourth principle builds competence. Confidence without ability is fragile. A man develops confidence by becoming capable. Competence comes from learning, practicing, failing, improving. A young man should ask, what skills can I develop? What problems can I solve? How can I become useful? The world rewards value. The person who develops skills becomes capable of creating opportunities. The fifth principle, master your emotions. A mature man does not become emotionless. He becomes emotionally intelligent. He understands anger can be controlled, fear can be managed, sadness can be accepted, failure can be survived. The goal is not to destroy emotions. The goal is to prevent emotions from controlling decisions. The strongest man is not the person who never struggles emotionally. The strongest man is the person who can remain responsible even during emotional difficulty. The sixth principle, develop a hurt beyond yourself. A life focused only on personal pleasure eventually becomes empty. Human beings need meaning. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl demonstrated this through his experiences during the Holocaust. He discovered that people can endure enormous suffering when they have meaning. A young man needs a reason to discipline himself. Purpose answers, why should I work hard? Why should I sacrifice? Why should I become better? Purpose transforms struggle into progress. The seventh principle, find mentors and become one. No man develops alone. Every generation depends on the transfer of wisdom. A young man needs teachers, coaches, elders, mentors, people who can guide him. But maturity also means becoming a guide for others. A man eventually moves from being taught to teaching. The greatest achievement is not only personal success, it is helping others succeed. A modern rite of passage for boys. The modern world needs a renewed understanding of transition. Boys need meaningful experiences that communicate. You are growing. You have responsibilities. You have something valuable to contribute. A modern rite of passage could include education, learning about history, finances, relationships, ethics, responsibility, challenge, experiencing difficult tasks, physical development, problem solving, community service, mentorship, having someone older provide guidance, responsibility, being trusted with meaningful duties, recognition, the community acknowledging growth. The role of families. Families are the first training ground of character. Parents must teach love, discipline, responsibility, respect. Children need both compassion and boundaries, encouragement and correction, freedom and guidance. A child who receives only comfort may become fragile. A child who receives only criticism may become insecure. The goal is balance. The aura of schools. Schools should not only prepare students for employment, they should prepare them for life. Education should develop knowledge, character, cooperation, critical thinking. A teacher may influence a student for decades. A single moment of encouragement can change a person's future. The rule of society. A culture teaches through what it celebrates. If society celebrates fame without character, wealth without ethics, power without responsibility, young people will imitate those values. But if society celebrates integrity, service, courage, wisdom, young people will pursue those qualities. Every generation teaches the next generation what matters. The complete image of a man. After this entire journey, we can define mature manhood. A mature man knows himself, he has identity, controls himself, he has discipline, develops himself, he gains competence, protects others, he uses strength responsibly, loves deeply, he understands sacrifice, leads wisely, he serves rather than dominates, builds a legacy, he creates something beyond himself. The final message: the world does not need more men who simply chase power. It needs men who understand responsibility. It does not need men who demand respect. It needs men who earn respect. It does not need men who seek control over others. It needs men who have mastered themselves. A boy becomes a man when he realizes life is not only about what he can receive, it is about what he can contribute. The journey from boyhood to manhood is not completed when a person becomes older. It is completed when he becomes someone others can depend on. A true man is strong enough to protect, wise enough to listen, disciplined enough to sacrifice, humble enough to learn, courageous enough to act, compassionate enough to care, responsible enough to lead. The greatest question every boy must eventually answer is, what kind of man will I become? And the greatest question every man must eventually answer is, because I lived, did the world become better?